The labyrinth of mirrors stretched endlessly, each reflective surface distorting reality in increasingly unsettling ways. Dr. Mira Chen stumbled forward, her own fractured image multiplied 1,000-fold around her. "This isn't real," she whispered, but the words felt hollow even as they left her lips. The experiment had gone terribly wrong, and now the line between subject and researcher had blurred beyond recognition. A week ago, Mira had been at the forefront of cutting-edge neuropsychology, developing a revolutionary treatment for extreme dissociative disorders. The theory was elegant: use carefully calibrated virtual reality simulations to help patients reintegrate fragmented aspects of their psyche. But theory and practice, as always, proved to be treacherously different beasts. "Hello?" Mira called out, her voice bouncing back at her from 100 angles. Was that movement in the corner of her eye, or just another trick of the light? She pressed on, trying to ignore the growing suspicion that she was no longer alone in this maze of her own making. The first sign that something had gone catastrophically wrong came 3 days into the trial. Subject 23, a promising candidate with dissociative identity disorder, reported vivid hallucinations that persisted long after the VR headset was removed. By day 5, 3 more subjects exhibited similar symptoms. And now, somehow, Mira found herself trapped in a manifestation of their collective unconscious. A flash of red caught Mira's attention, a splash of color in the sea of silvered glass. She whirled around, heart pounding, only to see her own wide-eyed reflection staring back. But wait, was that a flicker of someone else's features superimposed over her own? "Who's there?" she demanded, her scientific detachment crumbling in the face of mounting terror. "We are all here," came a whisper, seeming to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You invited us in, Doctor. Did you really think you could contain us?" Mira's breath caught in her throat as the implications hit her. The fragmented personalities of her subjects somehow coalesced and given form in this nightmare realm. She had aimed to heal, to bring order to chaos. Instead, she had created something far more dangerous, a collective consciousness unbound by the laws of reality. "This isn't possible," Mira insisted, even as the evidence of her senses told her otherwise. She closed her eyes, willing herself to wake up, to return to the sterile safety of her lab. But when she opened them again, the maze remained, and now she could clearly see other figures moving in the distance, their features a disturbing blend of her subjects' faces. A hand touched her shoulder, and Mira spun around with a gasp. She found herself face to face with a man she recognized as Subject 17's dominant personality. "Welcome to our world, Dr. Chen," he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "We have so much to show you." As Mira stared into those familiar yet alien eyes, she realized with growing horror that her role had irrevocably shifted. She was no longer the observer, the healer. She had become a part of the very phenomenon she sought to understand. And in this realm where thought shaped reality, her own fragile psyche was now at the mercy of the fractured mind she had tried to mend. "What do you want?" Mira asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. The reflections around her seemed to pulse with anticipation, as if the very air was alive with the collective will of her subjects. Subject 17, or whatever this entity truly was, cocked his head, considering. We want what you promised us, Doctor. Integration. Wholeness. But on our terms, not yours." A cacophony of whispers rose around them, fragments of thoughts and memories swirling like leaves in a storm. Mira struggled to make sense of it all, her scientific mind grasping for any thread of rationality in this impossible situation. "This is a delusion," she insisted, more to herself than to the apparition before her. "A shared hallucination, nothing more. If I can just find the source, I can end this." The figure that wore Subject 17's face laughed, a sound that shattered into 1,000 echoes. "Oh, Doctor, you still don't understand. We are the source. And you are the key that unlocked us." As if on cue, the maze began to shift, mirrors sliding and rearranging themselves into new, impossible configurations. Mira felt a surge of vertigo as the ground seemed to tilt beneath her feet. She reached out to steady herself, only to find her hand passing through what she thought was a solid surface. "Stop this," she cried, panic rising in her chest. "You're going to tear reality apart." "Reality?" Another voice chimed in, and Mira turned to see Subject 8 approaching, her usually timid demeanor replaced by something far more assertive. "Whose reality, Doctor? Yours? Ours? In here, they're one and the same." Mira's mind raced, trying to apply logic to a situation that defied all rational explanation. If this was truly a manifestation of her subject's collective unconscious, perhaps she could still guide it, shape it into something less chaotic. She took a deep breath, centering herself. Okay, she said, forcing calm into her voice. Let's talk about this. You said you want integration. How can we achieve that without causing more harm? The figures exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Then, to Mira's surprise, the maze began to stabilize, the wild shifting of mirrors slowing to a gentle undulation. Now you're asking the right questions, Subject 17 said, a hint of approval in his tone. But are you prepared for the answers? They may not be what you expect. Mira nodded, steeling herself. I'm listening, she said, acutely aware that her next words could determine not just her fate, but potentially the fate of her patients' minds and perhaps even the nature of consciousness itself. As the conversation unfolded, Mira found herself navigating a psychological landscape more complex than anything she had ever encountered in her years of research. Each of her subjects, or rather, the amalgamations of personalities that represented them, presented unique perspectives on the nature of identity and reality. Subject 8, once crippled by anxiety, now spoke with the confidence of someone who had discovered hidden reserves of strength. We don't need to be fixed, Doctor, she explained. What you see as disorder, we've come to understand as a form of adaptation. Our multiple selves aren't a weakness, they're a survival strategy. Mira listened, her scientific curiosity warring with her ingrained beliefs about mental health. But the distress, the dysfunction in daily life, surely that needs addressing. Subject 23, a quiet presence until now, stepped forward. The distress comes from trying to fit into a world that only accepts one way of being, he said softly. Here, in this space between realities, we found a harmony we never knew was possible. As Mira processed this, the environment around them began to change once more. The harsh edges of the mirrored maze softened, giving way to a landscape that seemed to breathe with the collective emotions of those present. Colors swirled and merged, forming patterns that spoke of both unity and diversity. This is beautiful, Mira admitted, her fear giving way to awe. But how can this translate to the real world? You can't stay here forever. Subject 17 smiled enigmatically. Who says we can't? Doctor, you've stumbled upon something far greater than a treatment for dissociation. You've opened a door to a new form of existence. The implications of his words hit Mira like a physical force. Had she inadvertently created a new plane of consciousness? A realm where the laws of physics and the boundaries of individual minds no longer applied? As if reading her thoughts, Subject 8 placed a comforting hand on Mira's arm. Don't be afraid, she said gently. You're not losing your mind. You're expanding it. We all are. Mira took a deep breath, forcing herself to approach the situation with the objectivity she'd cultivated throughout her career. All right, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Let's say I accept this is real. What happens now? What are the ethical implications of what we've created here? The landscape around them rippled in response to her questions, as if the very fabric of this reality was eager to explore the possibilities. Mira watched in fascination as abstract concepts took visual form, swirling vortexes of color representing the blending of minds, shimmering barriers that might be the last vestiges of individual identity. Now, said Subject 17, his eyes gleaming with excitement, we learn, we grow, we evolve, and you, Dr. Chen, will be our guide. As the words left his lips, Mira felt a shift in her perception. Suddenly, she could sense the presence of every mind in this strange new realm, not just her original subjects, but echoes of others, drawn to this nexus of consciousness. The potential was staggering and more than a little terrifying. I don't know if I'm qualified for this, Mira admitted, the weight of responsibility settling heavily on her shoulders. A chorus of gentle laughter surrounded her. None of us are qualified, Subject 23 said warmly. That's what makes this so exciting. We're charting unknown territory together. As Mira contemplated the enormity of what lay ahead, she became aware of a new presence forming at the edges of her awareness. It felt familiar, yet fundamentally changed. With a start, she realized it was her own fragmented psyche, aspects of herself she had never fully acknowledged now seeking integration in this malleable reality. Welcome, Doctor, Subject 8 said, a knowing smile playing on her lips. Are you ready to become both the observer and the observed? Mira hesitated for just a moment before nodding. As she opened herself to this new level of experience, she felt the last of her fear melting away, replaced by an exhilarating sense of possibility. Whatever came next, she knew, would redefine not just her understanding of the human mind, but the very nature of reality itself. The boundaries between individuals began to blur, thoughts and memories flowing freely between minds. Mira found herself experiencing flashes of her subjects' lives, the traumas that had fractured them, the strengths they had developed in response. In turn, she felt her own experiences being absorbed and understood by the collective. As this exchange of consciousness continued, the environment around them evolved, becoming a living representation of their shared inner worlds. Landscapes shifted from serene beaches to forbidding mountain ranges, each transformation reflecting the ebb and flow of their collective emotional state. "This is incredible," Mira breathed, watching as a thought she had barely formed manifested as a shimmering constellation above them. The implications for neuroscience, for psychology, for humanity as a whole. Subject 17 nodded, his form seeming to flicker between his various personalities. "But with great power comes great responsibility," he said, echoing Mira's earlier concerns. "We need to establish safeguards, ethical guidelines for this new frontier." Mira agreed, her mind already racing with the potential applications and pitfalls of their discovery. "We need to find a way to maintain individual autonomy while still benefiting from this collective consciousness," she mused. "And we need to consider the impact on the outside world. How do we prevent this from being misused?" As they debated these weighty issues, Mira became aware of a gentle tugging sensation, as if part of her was being drawn back towards her physical body. The others noticed it too, their forms becoming slightly less distinct. "It seems our time here is limited," Subject 8 observed. "At least for now. The question is, what do we do with what we've learned when we return?" Mira considered this carefully. "We proceed with caution," she said finally. "We document everything, but we keep it confidential until we fully understand what we're dealing with, and we come back together to explore further." The others murmured their agreement as the pull towards waking grew stronger. As the vibrant mindscape around them began to fade, Mira felt a profound sense of both loss and anticipation. She knew that nothing would ever be the same for her patients, or for the world once this discovery came to light. "Until next time, Dr. Chen," Subject 17 said, his voice growing distant. "Remember, the boundaries between dreams and reality are more permeable than we ever imagined." With a gasp, Mira's eyes flew open. She found herself back in her office at the Institute, the familiar surroundings a stark contrast to the fluid reality she had just experienced. For a moment, she wondered if it had all been an incredibly vivid dream. Then she noticed the subtle changes. Colors seemed more vibrant, and she could swear she felt the faintest echoes of her subject's thoughts at the edges of her consciousness. A quick glance at the monitors showed all patients were awake, their vital signs elevated but stable. Mira took a deep breath, centering herself. She knew that what lay ahead would challenge everything she thought she knew about the human mind. But as she prepared to check on her patients, her fellow explorers in this new frontier, she couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement. The journey they had begun in that shared mindscape was far from over. In fact, Mira realized as she stood to face this brave new world, it had only just begun.